I mean, we were broke as a joke, as they say.
Right after we got married, we had a big debate. Should I spend $20,000 on coaching? And she's like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I'm like, "I gotta do this." She's like, "No, no, no."
My parents, very hard workers, very frugal, but I know they had money and we had a safety. Like we never had to worry. We always had what we needed. Sometimes we got extra, but it was never like crazy extra, but we were safe and secure. Like I knew that.
My kid's like, "I want an iPhone." Well, let's talk about, is that important to you? Why is it important to you relative to other things? If you do this, you can't do that. Is this a trade-off you want to make? And if it is, then there's going to be a budget for things that they think are important.
It's not always about alignment, but it's about honoring somebody else's perspective.
Welcome, Coaches Nation. I'm Daniel, and I'm here with Sherry, my co-host for today, Dr. Sherry Fluellen, who, with me, we run Coaching Mastery Community, which is a sponsor for today's podcast. And we are really excited about today's topic. I want you to think about money and your finances as a coach. Oh my gosh, please don't talk to me about finances. No, we need to talk about finances. And if you do not want to talk about finances, this is even more reason for you to listen today. Because a lot of us just want to coach and we don't want to think about the money part. We don't think about the finances part. We don't think about the business part. But it's all really important. And we should talk about, how should we think about money? What are some great ways to think about money? That's why I'm really excited to have Sherry here, because she's really good at this stuff. And how do we manage our thinking and our money when it comes to finances?
Yeah.
So Sherry, I'm really excited to talk to you about this today.
Me too. So it's interesting. I've been a psychologist for over 15 years, and people tell me about their sex life. Yeah, I mean, I've heard everything. The one topic that people struggle to have conversations about the most is money. Like people would rather tell me like all about their impotence than their challenges with debt. Like it's crazy. The finances is really big topic. And my husband and I, this is like the single topic that we still argue about. We've got everything else pretty well dialed in, but we still get emotions and riled up when we're talking about our finances and money and our businesses and how they're flowing together and supporting each other or not supporting each other. So this is just a relevant and highly emotionally charged topic that we definitely do not want to avoid as coaches, because if we're avoiding it as coaches, there's a blind spot that we have that it's going to end up, our clients are going to get that blind spot. So the better we get, the better our clients get.
Sherry, can I ask if you're willing to share? Now you have to after saying that. With you and your husband, like with money, are you guys talking at like a strategic level? Like how are we going to allocate our money? Are you guys talking about like we don't necessarily agree what money we have or what's important? Is it values? Like what is the arguments primarily around like most of the time?
That's a really great question. So things have changed over our relationship. So first I'll talk about how we argued about money at the beginning of our marriage, which was over 25 years ago. I remember, we were broke as a joke, as they say. We got married while I was in college. My husband worked full time, and we came into the marriage having very different experiences with our families and understanding money meaning different things. My parents, very hard workers, very frugal, but I know they had money and we had a safety. Like we never had to worry. We always had what we needed. Sometimes we got extra, but it was never like crazy extra, but we were safe and secure. Like I knew that. Well, my husband came from a family that also were decently hard workers, but they spent a lot. They weren't intentional about their money. They always had debt. And there was always this level of frenetic anxiety around not being able to afford things and not being able to do cool things. Like one simple example is every year, my family, we went on a camping tour with a camping trailer for like 2 to 3 weeks every year. We would all pack up and go drive and visit like 12 states. Wasn't like, that's not super costly. It's not like we went overseas and like stayed in luxury hotels, but it was something that my parents were intentional about doing. But my husband, his family, they never went on vacations ever. Like maybe one time they went camping. That's it. So it was just, we came with these different mindsets and we argued about it. My husband, it was very much like money is meant to spend now and to have fun. That was like the opposite. For me, it was money is meant to save for the future.
Ah.
Very, very opposite at the time felt very opposite in our philosophies. And that is what caused every single argument. Because my husband would spend the money. I'd be like, dude, we don't have enough in savings. So then I would argue about savings. And so over the 25 years, we have learned that neither one is right
What?
necessarily.
Weren't you
It's
gonna give us
about
the answer who's right? No, I'm just kidding.
it's about honoring both perspectives. And so we've learned that. So that's how we argued then. And how we argue now is more of the big picture. We're both entrepreneurs, which creates an extra level of interestingness, if I'll make that a word, in our relationship. And so he's got a business, I have a business, and then we have a couple businesses together. And so our conversations about money now is more about, well, how much am I going to take of salary from this business and leave as profit? But then how are we supplementing our family needs from other businesses? And
Yes, it's
how
more
much?
strategic questions now. Before it was
Yeah.
like personal alignment questions, and now it's
Yeah.
strategic. So you guys have taken 25 years to personally align and move to strategy over time. And I like that you said there's like opposites. They're like it's actually two different ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
And so, but both are valuable. So I love that you
Yeah.
guys have made that transition from like like personal conflict to strategic conflict, which is much more valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so we're still working through, I mean, even as recent as less than a week ago, I brought up a topic because I'm the coach. My husband's not a coach. I'm a coach. Of course, I'm willing to, I'm asking questions and prying and stuff like that in a very thoughtful, wonderful way. I would never come at him with a question out of any sort of ill intent, right? Okay, so maybe I was a little sarcastic in some of my questions to him, but I was asking some questions and he was getting a little defensive, and then
Oh,
I
I
would get
missed
defensive back,
it.
and so then we're like time out, and then like the next day, after reflecting on it, be like, okay, let's come back, and like this is what I saw happening. Here's what I need to do differently. What do you think? So I'm like coaching. I mean, he's used to this, like right. So, but anyway, so financial challenges and having these conversations, I would say let's just set the expectation that it's not going to be easy. So there, I said it. I've shared my own challenges around it. It's not an easy topic. And, but there are three principles when I've reflected on my life, my businesses, how I've conducted myself, the lessons I've learned over the years. There are three principles, general principles of financial management that I think are really important and I wanted to share with everybody. And so Daniel, you get to join in on that conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
First,
I'm really excited to hear about your principles and talk through them because I probably have some similar and different principles. I'm really curious to see like where our principles align and where our like experiences align because I've had my own journey with my wife around money too, and I
yeah.
remember like right after we got married, we had a big debate. Should I spend $20,000 on coaching? And she's like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I'm like, "I got to do this." She's like, "No, no, no." And so since then back then it was more like, hey, like we're arguing about independence. Like I was coming from like, hey, don't control my money decisions because I didn't understand it's a we now, and we didn't make it all the way to fully we on all this decision making. And now I would say today we don't have any arguments like that. It's all about we, and it's all about us and our family and what we're doing and strategically. It's all strategic questions.
Yeah.
But I would say we're at the place where we can make very, very, very fast decisions together. Like I would say like we fight not in the sense of like we want different things, and it's in the sense that we both know we have different perspectives, and we'll talk through we'll like talk through it until all of a sudden we're like, okay, we think we figured this out, and then we'll go execute. And it's like it's going so fast. I was just remarking on this the other day when we had a major issue crop up that is in one of our businesses that actually, let's be honest, it's one of my old businesses that cropped up a huge financial issue, and then we had to like decide what to do about this. And so we spent like a full day just like triaging and figuring out what the heck was the lay of the land, and then we sort of created a plan and we're like executing on it together, and it's going really well. I'm shocked at how fast we go today.
That's awesome.
So I'm I
And the
think
only
most couples go through
way,
that journey from like values or like conflict or like personal side, and then eventually when you align, you're talking strategically about
yes,
your life.
yes.
So that's where you want to get to.
And the only way that you got there, Daniel, is because you were willing to have these conversations, you and your wife. So,
100%.
and her name is Kate. And we actually did an episode where Faisal, Danielle, and myself, we all were on, and our spouses were on. So if you're
Oh, yeah.
curious to see a face and a voice with these people, like go watch that episode.
Has it been posted? I think it might not have gotten posted yet, but it's gonna come soon.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good. There you go. Well, but if you're listening to this as a podcast, it will have been posted by that time. If you're
That is
watching
true.
this live, you
Yeah.
may have to wait. Yeah. So I just want to share one more story before we dive into the principles. And this highlights that it's not always about alignment, but it's about honoring somebody else's perspective. So as I said, like my husband's all about, he has learned to see my ways a little bit.
He's learned to see the truth.
I've also learned to see his ways a little bit. So it's that's what marriage is about. But he's still all about how, like, I want to play now, it reminds me of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that little girl. She's like, I want a pretty pony now, daddy. Like,
Rupert Salt?
Yeah. So anyway, so my husband a couple of years ago or a year ago, he's like, I want a sports car. And I was like, no, like that is so not my value system. And he didn't say anything for quite some time. And then he's like, I found the sports car. I'm like, but like, we didn't decide that this was the right thing. And I was so angry at him. I was like, no, like this. And I chose to take a step back, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna oppose him on this. Like, this is really important to him. And, we had conversation about it. I kind of understood where he's coming from and how this was, he's a salesman, like, at heart, and like, he needs rewards. He needs like, and for this was like a really huge reward for him internally about, from his hard work. So this is like seriously like my biggest, still not in my value system, but my biggest, you know what, I'm gonna let this go, and I'm gonna like totally let him make a decision based on his value system. So, it's probably gonna be like, so he did buy it, but it's like this process, because he bought it and now it's getting taken apart and it's getting rebuilt as some other car. So it's like, so it wasn't even just like a one-time purchase. Like, we're dragging this out over a year and a half, and like
nothing is a one-time purchase.
I know. So
it all has maintenance. It all has like future like things that are projects. It's like nothing is a one-time cost that you think it's a one-time cost.
So whatever, like $85,000, $90,000 later, which is not that expensive for a sports car in the reality of things. But still, again, my thought process is, oh my gosh, that's a down payment for another real estate investment property that will pay for our, so like, we're coming from very different perspectives, but it's not always about we're aligned in exactly how we spend our money, but I'm aligned in honoring what his needs and how he's wired and how he's built. So
yeah.
So I just wanted to share that we got to give and let our spouses or business partners or whoever it is, they need to win too, and their wins are going to look different than ours.
But it's also highly contextual, right? It depends what's happening in your life. Depending, like, if you're in a high income part of your life or a low income part of your life, you might make slightly different changes. But it's difficult to adapt to those changes as they're coming if you're not having these strategic level conversations. So, for example, like back in the day where I was making a lot more money in my corporate career, I could afford to drop a bunch of money on things. When I switched to being an entrepreneur, like, that money is not certain anymore. It's different, right? Yeah. And so, like, you can't go on making the same types of decisions with the money, which I was continuing to do. I just assumed the money would be there, but I hadn't built the business yet. So like, I think I actually like agree with you both. Like, you need to be able to live and spend, and like, money. What's the purpose of money, right? The purpose of money. Well, there's lots of purposes of money, but the purpose of money is to buy the things that you want to buy with money for your own reasons. And so it's like, what do you want to accomplish in the world? Whether it's to buy a thing or to do a thing or to have a thing or to create a thing. That's what money is. Money is a tool, just like a hammer. What's the purpose of a hammer? To build something. Okay, great. Money is here to build something too. And so it depends what your value trade-offs are. And I think as coaches, I understand way better now. As a coach, I understand way better now the value of both sides of the spectrum being important all the time. Like, okay, you want to play now, go ahead and play now. But just remember, if you want to play now forever, you might not need to play now with the whole load of cash, right? We may want to think about how we can play now tomorrow too, right? And so both those perspectives matter, and it's actually really good that you have one side and he has the other side, because now both strengths can be leveraged. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be just, a fight. It can be like, how do we make sure we play? How do we make sure we save? How do we make sure we build for tomorrow? How do we make sure we enjoy this now? But all really important.
absolutely. So the three principles that we're going to jump into are irregardless of where you are on the money spectrum. If you're still working on building your business, still working on the beginning of your life, beginning of your professional career, building things and still working on that, or if you're, in abundance, or if you had abundance and then stuff happened and now you're having to rebuild, it doesn't really matter. These are three principles that I believe are worth considering and worth thinking about how they can be integrated into your life. And if you totally disagree with me, Daniel, or anybody that's listening, that is totally fine. I would love to hear your perspective on kind of on how this plays into your life or doesn't. So here are the three. We'll start with the first one. The first one, the way that I title this is totally not my title. This is actually the title of a book, which I love. It's called Profit First. It's written by Mike Michalowicz. Amazing book, in my opinion, super easy to understand. It lays out a philosophy around how, as entrepreneurs, it's important that we make sure that we feed ourselves first before we take care of the business. It's kind of the same philosophy as they say in the airlines, when the little mask drops, you have to put your own mask on first before you can help other people. So financially, this is the same concept. The book itself goes into details about how that looks, but I just think that principle of making sure we take care of ourselves first is critical. And so, within that is like, okay, so what is your system of how you distribute your money? How are you paying yourself, or how are you making sure your bills get paid? How are you making sure that your future is getting funded? Like, these are all questions that are really important. And if you don't have a solid answer for, I think that the question that I know people don't have a response for more than anything else is, how are you funding your future? If you're unclear on that, then I encourage you to figure out the solution for that. Like, there's a million and one solutions, but really work on that. What are your thoughts about the profit first principle?
What I like about Profit First is it's the same thing
Oh, I
with
think
the
Dan.
oxygen mask in the airplane. The basic idea is make sure you take care of the most important thing that generates the money, which is you. Like, take care of yourself so that you can generate the money, right? And um, I mean, it's like it's almost self-evident unless you haven't thought about it, right? When most people haven't thought about it to that level, especially in business. Just make sure that you're bringing yourself the money that you need to operate, right? Like, the whole point of Profit First is you take profit first. You don't wait forever to take your profit. I mean, you can depending what your business strategy is, but that I like that. I like that general as a principle
Yeah,
because it's it's self-consistent with the challenges that coaches have to go through as they build their business,
absolutely.
right? Don't spend all the money you earn um, because you need to live, because you need to maybe enjoy some money a
Yeah.
little, right?
And
Enjoy the fruit along the
certainly,
way.
right. And certainly this is going to look different for coaches that are full-time and like this literally needs to be their livelihood. Or if this is a part-time deal. I was just talking with another coach last night who who's in the midst of applying for a full-time job because she has to support her family. But she's still 100% committed to growing the coaching business. It's just going to look a little different in pace than if she had different resources in life, but she doesn't. So it's amazing. But it's like, doesn't matter what your life needs to be right now. There's still opportunities to work towards. Even if right now you can only put 0.5% of your income into a savings account or into something
Do
as
something.
your profit first, that is, what you have started. You've acted on the principle and you have made a start. And then you can just slowly, gradually shift as you're able to, as you learn more about it. And
It's
there's
actually
one,
just a mind shift. It's a mind shift of taking action on the thing, even if it's not going to make a huge difference. It's the
absolutely.
mind shift and the habituation and the practice of doing that process that gets you there.
Absolutely. The one other piece that totally believe in this idea of, examining our finances and where is it going. And this philosophy comes from Dave Ramsey. And it is that every dollar has a purpose or a mission. And so when we think about it, we talk about this with our time. Where is our time going? Where are we allocating our time? How are we going to have time efficiency? And every minute of our day is doing something. And so I believe for me, it's making sure that every day, every minute of my day is purposeful. And it might be purposeful that I'm taking time off and relaxing and spending time. It doesn't mean I'm like doing business and work all the time, but I know it's not just accidentally going somewhere. And I think it's extremely valuable when we treat our money the same way. Doesn't mean that our money can't go to fun and can't do these things, but do we know how much and exactly where it is going? And if we don't, there's some really hard work, I think, that needs to happen to examine where our money is going.
I love the way you said that. I think I'm going to adopt a new phrase, a new mantra too there, which is every dollar has a mission and every hour has a mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the mission for the hour? Right now, our mission is the podcast, right? That's our mission right now. But does every hour and every dollar you have a mission? And the way I think about, and this is one of my principles, Sherry, which is allocate your money, and I would also add your time. And obviously, we're all works in progress here, so if you're not 100% perfect on this, that's not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is every dollar can be allocated according to what matters to you.
Yeah,
so like allocating according to values, right? Allocating your money according to values. Because if you don't allocate it according to your values, it's going to be allocated to some random thing or somebody else's values, right? Just like
somebody else's values. Yeah,
it's like if you don't intentionally put places in your calendar to do things you want to, it'll be taken up by whatever comes up, by somebody else's agenda, by, distraction, by whatever random thing pops up in your feed. Like if you don't, right? It's the same thing with your money. Your money will go to random stuff if you're not thoughtful about where you're allocating your dollars.
Yes.
Or your pounds or your rupees, whatever it is, your currency, your Bitcoin.
Yes. And one quick story around the values piece of it. This is a recent shift I did. What I've noticed, so I have 4 kids, and what I've noticed with my kids, which I hated me saying this, but I would say it anyway, is they would ask to do something, go somewhere, buy something. I'd be like, we don't have the money. Well, two things I hated about it. One is technically we do have the money, but secondly, it was more about, I don't find that important. And so I was listening to a podcast about, I was engaging in a mastermind. That's what it was. I was engaging in a mastermind about how to teach kids about finances. And it was amazing. It was amazing masterclass with this gentleman. And through that, I realized like how I can switch the phrasing to it. And so now what I say is not that we can't afford it. It's that doesn't align with how we choose to spend our money. And so I just kind of wanted to share that kind of shift that I've done literally in the last month with my kids. And we can say that, remind ourselves of that too. I am choosing not to spend money on this because I'd rather spend that money in something else that's more in alignment with our values.
I love that, Sherry. And the way I think about this is trade-offs. Everything is a trade-off, right? And I've been thinking, my kids are only 3 and under, but I think a lot about how I'm going to say no to them when they want to buy something that doesn't make sense for our family or for them when they just want it, right? And so one of the things I'm doing today is when we go to the store, we're buying things on a list. We had an intentional list before, and he's like, I want this thing. Oh, yeah, sure, you can hold it. We're going to put it back before we leave. We're not getting that today. We don't need that. And I always tell him, like, let me look at the list that Mama made, or let me look at my list, and like we're going to find the things that we listed. And then at some point in the future, it's going to be more like, hey, here is our, here's what things cost, and here's what we want. And if we don't want that vacation, or if we don't want this thing, let's talk about it as a family. And you have a voice. You have a voice and an input in there. Obviously, the older you get, the more mature you get, the more weighted your voice becomes. And I'm also realizing, to extend an idea that you hinted at, is that just because I don't think something is important, if somebody else in my family thinks something is important, there needs to be a budget for what other people think are important that I don't think is important. So, like, for example, with me and my wife, there's some things I'm like, you know what? If you really think that's, like, so she likes gardening, and we have this beautiful landscaped yard in our new home, that came from the previous owners, and she's like, "Oh, I'm really gonna need to buy some things and things." I'm like, you know what? For gardening, unlimited budget. I would say that I'd never spend that much like money on anything gardening related. I'll be just like, whatever, just like use a stick, because I don't know that much about gardening, but I'm really enjoying the backyard. But more importantly, it's important to her, so it needs to be some allocation of our money to things that she thinks important that I don't, that I wouldn't spend money that she might. And same thing's gonna be for my kids. My kid's like, I want an iPhone. Well, let's talk about, is that important to you? Why is it important to you relative to other things? If you do this, then you can't do that. Is this a trade-off you want to make? And if it is, then there's going to be a budget for things that they think are important. Yeah. It's not going to be a huge budget at the beginning, but it's going to grow over time. And what I want them to do is learn to earn so that they can burn the cash that they so they don't have to constantly yearn for things we're just going to say no to. Like, how we do this in an intentional way with our kids, it's going to be like, so I have all these theories right now about how it's going to go. But
oh my gosh,
like I think about this a lot because I want to be a conscious parent when it comes to finances and everything. But
I have a million stories to add to that. However, this is not a podcast about family finances. So I am going to shift us into the second of our principles. And the second principle that I have learned is very important for me and my businesses is make sure that I'm investing back into my business and back into me. And
how do you distinguish those two?
The reason I distinguish those two is because when we think about our business, I think there really is two ways to think about our business. Sometimes our business is us, but also our business is not us. So I think both things are true at the same time. And me as my business. So let's use my coaching business as an example. If I don't coach, there's no money. Like, I am a critical and necessary piece to my business. And I know that the better I get at coaching, the better I get at managing the systems around coaching, the better the coaching business will be. And so this is one of the core principles for the coaching mastery community, because our pro membership, for all of our coaches in that, we have a coaching chain, which means that every member gets to be coached by another coach. And the reason we have that as part of our foundational program is because we believe that as we get better, whether it's me getting better as a mom, me getting better as a wife, me getting better in my own health, whatever it is, and me getting better in my business principles, all of that's going to materialize in me being better as a core individual, which will then help the business be able to be better. So it's like leveling me up levels up the business. So I think that is critical. And so let me pause there. Daniel, kind of how have you noticed that playing factor into your life?
I love the reinvest kind of theme. I think it's really important to invest, and I think was it who was it, Mark Cuban maybe, anyway, some like multi-billion-dollar entrepreneur said, you are the most valuable thing to invest in any business. Your like, if it's your business, like a coaching business, your skill set is going to be a differentiator. So investing in yourself, there's lots of ways to invest in yourself too. So I've been really good at investing myself over the years in ways that are really practical, useful, and return on investment, and in ways that are not. And sometimes over the journey, sometimes you invest in things and they move you forward a little bit, and sometimes they move you forward a lot. And it's all relative to where you are, what you're able to take from the return. And a lot of the investing in yourself is actually personal growth. It's like your ability to handle your life, to handle your business, to handle decision making, to handle confrontations, to handle conversations, to handle all kinds of conflicting objectives and trade-offs. The personal growth that you go through for having gone through adversity is probably the most important thing, which is why it's so important to do hard things. As I tell my kid, can we do hard things? Yes, we can. And we like to. And obstacles make us stronger. So it's like, it's really important for us as coaches in a coaching business, since we are the centerpiece, that we are the single point of failure in a coaching business, to make sure that we are investing in our skill sets as a coach and a human. Because the thing I love about coaching is when you invest in yourself as a coach, you're investing in yourself as a human. You're making the planet better because you're becoming a better human. You're becoming a better leader. You're becoming a better coach. You're becoming a better person in the lives of those around you, including your clients, of course. But it's like so aligned to grow as a coach and a person. And it's called reinvesting in your business when looked at through a different lens. So to me, it's all very aligned. Now, when you're reinvesting in a business, there's other things that you can also invest in that are not just personal growth and skills growth related. There are systems investments you can make.
Yes.
There are community investments you can make for support, which is also a personal growth investment if you think about it. So there's lots, like I invested in Zoom. I invested in a bunch of Google Drive stuff. These are investments you make as a coach. There are CRMs you can buy. There are so many things that an accountant. Oh, QuickBooks. Okay, there's so many things to invest in your business, and you don't have to do anything specific, but there are certain best practices that you can do, and certain strategic things that for your business you might want to invest in, depending where you want to take it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the nice thing about the coaching business is you can run it for very low cost structures if you want to.
Yes. So there is the reinvesting in ourselves, and then there's reinvesting in the people and the systems that can support the business.
Right.
And certainly as your coaching business grows, some coaches aspire to have a very large business, which maybe will have other coaches. And so certainly the structure of your business, you don't always have to be the single point of failure in your business, but chances are, I would, if I had to guess, I would say probably like 98% of coaching businesses are a coach and it's their business. And so most people that are listening to this, that's probably what your business looks like. And that's fine. And it's also fine if you aspire for something different, but being able to recognize where you're at and what the next thing is. I was talking with another coach a couple days ago, and I loved that she talked about she had this opportunity for growth and she had this opportunity that was presented to her for growth. But she was able to recognize that neither of those things was what she most urgently needed. And there was one type of growth that she identified was her constraint right now in her business. And I will tell you, that's wisdom. That is wisdom to be able to not take advantage of all the things right now, but really understanding what is the single biggest constraint in your business. And then that is where you focus your investing in. And when that's tackled and when you've been able to bust through that, what is your next biggest constraint?
This is very theory of constraints focused
Yes.
conversation. But I think the one challenge for early coaches in the first maybe 2 years, 3 years, even longer sometimes, is it's hard to know what that constraint actually is.
Absolutely.
We think it's the website. We think it's the business card. We think it's the thing. It could be our skills. But most of the time, it's emotional barriers. Yeah. It's not knowing how to handle those and not having the support and encouragement, which is why Coaching Mastery community exists, because there's so many. The next bottleneck is it's a very you can hit that one and be like, okay, well, now I'm stuck for 3 years, or well, let's say a year or several months, and I'm not going to make progress past that point because I don't know how to move past this, both emotionally and tactically, strategically. Whereas in our community, we're talking about those things all the time. It's like, oh yeah, you're stuck on this. You need to do this and this. And then you go do it and you're like, okay, great. And then you get stuck at the next one. And there's this constant, I love the analogy of like the ship in the harbor. Because the typical thing is the ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. Great. But in order to get your ship moving, it's got the ropes tying it down. And these are these constraints that you have. And every time you cut a rope, it goes a teeny bit farther, another rope, and then the last rope, it goes a little bit farther. But you're always cutting these ropes. And for early coaching businesses, most coaches have not yet been an entrepreneur, have not yet run a business, have not put themselves on the line in the market like that, have not really done a sales process, have not really gotten selling things, let alone selling their own coaching. There's many emotional ropes holding your boat down. And so investing in a community that can consistently help you break these ropes, consistently help you get over these constraints within yourself in your business. There's some really big power to that, to be in an environment where you can consistently rely on eliminating these barriers, because you won't be, if you show up and you share your wins or ask your questions, you will never be stuck for too long.
Absolutely. I love you bringing that up, because the counter option is just trying to figure everything out yourself. And as you pointed out, I'm like, oh, well, I think my constraint is this. So now I get online, I Google what's a program for this, and then I pay money or try to watch some videos. And then
I don't do it.
And then an hour to 3 months later, I have maybe implemented that stuff, but then realized that there was another constraint that actually came before the one I just solved. And so it's this significant time waste of problem solving and solutioning, and it's just doing it by ourselves doesn't work well. And that's part of what I love about how the world has evolved, is that we are so interconnected that the answer, the genuine right and best answer, is never far away, but it probably is going to require a conversation and a relationship to be able to extract that in the most effective way.
Yeah, and that's the power of coaching and the power of community and the power of support and encouragement, because some of the biggest constraints, being emotional in nature, means you don't even know that you're feeling them. You don't even see them until you're like, why can't I make this work? Why am I not getting this call on the calendar? It's like there's so many things within yourself that need to be addressed.
And let me just be a little bit bold here for a minute. If you're listening to this and you're like, but I'm a coach, I can solve my own problems. No, you can't. Don't have such a big ego to think that because you can help solve other people's problems that you don't need coaching. That is one of the most dangerous positions that you will ever be in as a coach. Do not be narcissistic. Do not be egotistical. And if you are, please leave the coaching industry. We don't need you. Okay, so there's my boldness. All right.
I want to caveat your boldness with a little other
Okay.
boldness, which is, if you cannot afford a coach right now, get the best coach you can afford.
There you go.
Anyways, I heard that from Rich Litvin. It's like, okay, I can't afford a great coach. Get a little coach, like a little bit of coaching, and just whatever you can afford. Have a coach in your life. Not only for the congruence, if you're building your coaching business, having a coach, but also because doing it on your own is not recommended, right? It's really much harder. And as much as we have a whole podcast, can you self-coach? Remember that one, Sherry?
Yeah.
But you can to a degree, but you also cannot to a certain point. So get a coach, and whatever coach you can afford, given your circumstances, is fine. It can be not as frequent as you'd like. It can be not as expensive as you'd like. I would love to invest in a $150,000 coach right now, but it's not in the budget because I'm allocating for my values right now, and we're raising family, and there's lots of things that have changed. So that's not the allocation that I need right now. But I am spending money on coaching. And actually, yesterday, Sherry, I was talking to my coach about beating myself up. Like, I'm like, my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed with all these things going on with my family. He's like, yeah, you don't need to beat yourself up so much. I'm like, but yeah, I know. But like, I tell my clients that, he's like, you know what? The person that I got trained from and the person that they got trained from, they can't do it either. Everybody beats themselves up.
Absolutely.
And that's part of why we need each other. We are here to, that's the power of coaching, It's like, don't worry if you beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up about beating yourself up. That's what I was doing. And so that's why we need coaching, right?
Yes.
It's part of it.
And related to what the story I talked about at the beginning, where my husband and I still have some heated emotional conversations about money, we were butting heads. We're like, there was some strategic decisions we knew we needed to make in order to move towards our family goals, but we were kind of locked in our own perspectives and not really as open to listening to each other as we needed to be. So we paid $10,000 and flew down and spent a day with a business strategist coach who unpacked everything about what we're doing. And then he's like, well, I mean, this is our interpretation of do the thing that makes you the most money per hour that you still absolutely love. And we're like, oh my gosh, that's so obvious. But it took, we'd still be arguing and like unsure about it if we had not done that. So absolutely, I do not have so much ego that I don't pay for coaching, because we get stuck in our own perspectives, and it's hard. So I mean, that made all the difference. It literally made all the difference for us over the past couple months. So
that's rule number 2: invest in yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
If you are afraid to invest in yourself, just try a little bit.
It's whatever, it's in whatever relationship in whatever relation you have right now. It's like, I think about it like tithing, right? It's like a percentage. So, assign a percentage of your income to reinvesting in yourself. And of course, the more you grow in income, the more that grows. Don't make it hard. Just start with something.
Yeah. It's like that profit first. Just start the habit of doing it in some way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, third principle that we're gonna dive into is, and this one's interesting. And I don't know that we've actually talked about this, Daniel, before, but we see this a lot. So it'll be interesting how this goes. So my perspective is
Yeah.
there is this consistent tension that I see with coaches and myself. The tension is between what I actually charge and what the market will bear. And I think this is a really important financial principle to think about in your business. What I've seen is so we got these two, like, what am I charging and what will the market bear? And what's interesting is what I see is this changes and kind of flip-flops as we get a little bit further into our career. At the beginning, what I see with beginning coaches is what they charge is a lot less than what the market will bear. I mean, sometimes we hear, I'll hear what I'm like, oh, well, what are you charging for a package or whatever? And they tell me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is like so cheap because I mean, I just have and have a perspective of what that variability is. And a lot of beginner coaches don't, and they doubt themselves. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why. And I'm not going to say that they should or shouldn't. I'm not putting a should on this because that is a very personal and an individual decision that needs to be made. But there's just this general tension between what in the beginning that what I charge and what the market will bear. And then as a coach progresses, then the question is, well, how and when do I increase? Like, how much do I increase? So there's this tension of should I? When's the right time? Like, so there's that question to figure out. And then we get to a point where maybe like, are you charging or wanting to charge more than what the market will bear? And so it's just interesting. There's this path that happens with coaches. And I want to bring it forward so that as you're listening to this, you can think about where you fall and what mindset shifts, maybe what skill sets maybe you need to bolster or how you can kind of marry the two together. So I'll pause there. Daniel, what are your thoughts on
I was
this?
thinking about this. I was looking up a slide from our 90-day challenge in coaching mastery communities, a 90-day client challenge. And one
Yes.
of the things we talked about, I couldn't find a slide, but one of the things we talked about is in setting your rates. Oh, it was in the pricing and offers, not in the vision. It was like a couple of different concepts that can help you think about your rates. And I think before I share that, it's like, yes, it's really hard to set rates because what you offer is so unique. There's not really competition for you. It's like some people are the right fit for you, some people are not. And same thing for everybody else. So it's like you're a very unique service that's based on your life experiences. So it's hard to price. It's hard to price. But when you're starting out, you don't have the confidence necessarily to price for what the market will pay for the results that you deliver. But also, you may not be able to deliver those results in the early stages. So I think it's okay to start somewhere. There's two numbers that you need to know. One is what's the floor? Like what is the lowest you could possibly, especially at the beginning, what's the lowest you could possibly charge below which it's not worth it for even you to do? Now there could be a point in your coaching where you're actually doing free coaching. And that's fine as long as it's worth it for you to do that free coaching in your own estimation. You decide what is the floor. It could be zero. It could also be whatever dollars per hour, per session, per package. We also encourage you not to charge per hourly rate for your clients. Frame a package so they can commit up front and think about the value they're getting for the whole package, not just hourly time, because hopefully you get them there even faster than you thought. But what is the floor? So if your floor is like, okay, so I could do 20 sessions for X number of dollars, that's the floor. And you're like, would I take lower? If the answer is yes, then that wasn't your floor. If the answer, so what number you're like, no, there's no way that I could make that work. And think about two things. Think about like what would feel so bad for you that you wouldn't show up, and think about, would you be able to make ends meet? Would you actually be losing money in your life and not be able to make it work so that you couldn't possibly be committed long term? That's how I think about the floor. And secondly, if you have a other source of income, which is ideal, your floor can be a lot lower because you have that support from that second part of it, which is like what's going to work for you. That's one. Number two is the idea. Like, what would you love to be charging? If you think in our vision section, in our 90-day challenge, there's a week spent on vision. We ask the question, like, what is your ideal lifestyle? If you know what your ideal lifestyle is, you can probably put an approximate cost on it and then figure out what you need to make. So if your business is going to be full-time, You might have this many clients. If it's all one-on-one as an example, this many clients would take this much time, and you need to make this much money for your ideal vision. Reverse engineer it so that that's the ideal one that you need to aim for, or maybe it's higher than that, but that's the one that you're aiming for. And you're not going to be able to charge that right away, probably, but you can start somewhere and see a path to that.
Yeah.
And somewhere, in the middle, you're going to have to think about what's going to price be. And the way I'd recommend you do it is think about, like, what are you so sure is a no-brainer offer? Like, people would have to be stupid not to say yes to that number, as long as it's above your floor. And then, what do you feel is the number that makes you show up better and stretches you a little bit? So it's like, if the number is, like, say $3,000 for whatever, I'm not even gonna say like what package like, but say at least you're charging $3,000, you feel like, oh my god, that's such a good deal for them. Great, that's a number you can totally charge. But if you're thinking $4,000, like, oh, I don't know if I could show up at that level and they would feel like that was worth it, then now you're getting a little stretch. So somewhere in there is a good number for you. I always say, like, stretch yourself a little bit, because the higher you charge, the more you're gonna have to show up, the more value you're gonna have to create. It makes you show up different. And then as you get stronger and more confident, then you start seeing what's valuable to people, and then capturing enough of that value to make it make sense for you from a business perspective is important.
Yeah, I love that. One of the, and so stretching yourself is, I think, a really important principle. And maybe it's not from 3 to 4. So what stretched me was when I doubled my rate, and I was like, oh, like the first time I said it to somebody, I was like, I really should go back and watch the video to see, like, if there was anything weird going on with my face or my eyes, when you throw that number out there and you're like cringing inside because you're like, oh my God, I've never asked for that much money before. But that was a huge growth moment for me. And the person said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh. So what's so cool is that when you stretch yourself and grow yourself, and then you're like, oh, I just established a new floor, or I just established a little more confidence. And it's a really cool journey. And, you're going to get people to say no. I've had plenty of people say no after that to that rate. But it's interesting because, and I just want to provide one counterpoint perspective to what you said, Daniel. I'm trying to remember exactly what you said. You were talking about, like, as a beginner coach, that you kind of figure out what's the least amount of money that you would accept for your time.
And just don't ever go lower than that.
Yeah. And how you said it was interesting. And shoot, I don't remember exactly how you said it. Because I think there could be the other end of the spectrum where we have a much higher amount of money that we, it's like, instead of being like, well, it's 3, well, what if it's like 25? What if it's 25,000? And because you don't need that income. You don't need to live off of it. So you're comparing.
Yeah.
So this is something that 2 months ago, when we paid for this business coach for a day, he helped us process all the things that we're doing in our life to the dollar per hour. And not that I do coaching per hour, because I don't do anything per hour, but it was hugely valuable for me to understand what's the income, the different streams of income that we do, and how much time and energy goes into that. And when we figured that out, I was like, oh, well, that helps me know that if I want to do coaching, if coaching is going to be my source of income, some of my income, then do I want it to be equivalent in my hourly time income as some other strategies, or do I not? Like, so
strategically in your life and your other businesses. And
absolutely.
Yeah, that's an important question.
There's clarity around that. And I know this is extremely helpful to think about your hourly value. And I don't mean your worth. This isn't about, you're worth a certain amount. This is literally about what the market will bear and how much money you're going to get, which will increase over time. So don't accept this as part of your identity, because it's not. Let's keep that separate. But especially if you have another job and you need to replace that income, you better start thinking about, at some point along the way, about your hourly rate and how that's going to materialize into the amount of money that you need and that sort of thing. So again, we definitely do not advise any coach to charge per hour, but being able to know what that is internally.
To break down what's the effectively hourly rate for you as a coach internally.
That matters.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I do that. We need to do that with you, because it's how much time are you spending for that money, right?
Absolutely.
Back to the question of trade-offs.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that. And
Yeah.
yeah. So any other thoughts about this whole topic before we wrap this up?
Yeah, that was a really, really interesting discussion on finances. It was really great to hear your 3 principles, Sherry, because that's what I wanted to hear today. As you made me think about some of my principles, I think, as I said, the one principle I came up with for me was allocating by your values. I'd say a couple other principles that I might say would be you are the one responsible for your finances. Nobody else can do it as well as you. Nobody else cares as much. Nobody else is going to put the money towards the things that you care about. So don't abdicate your responsibility to own your finances and to own everything about it. And then number two, sort of corollary of that would be, so track it all. Track it all very, very carefully and clearly, and don't neglect your responsibility there. But I really loved all the principles you shared too, Cherry. So thank you for having
Yes.
those.
And let me offer a freebie. We don't do this often, and but it just came to me. So because I do real estate investing, and when we work with banks and lenders and all these different things, they're always asking for a personal financial statement. So I have been doing our personal financial statement for probably a decade and updating it at least once a month or once a quarter, depending on what we're doing. And a personal financial statement, it's a spreadsheet that you put all of your assets and your liabilities, and you get your net worth. And that is a beautiful way to track your progress in your life, because there are going to be times where you have more income and more in your checking and savings account, and then there's going to be times where you just took on a liability, some debt or a loan, a mortgage, whatever, and it accounts for all of that. And so really that net worth amount is a very important number as we progress in life and we think about end of life and retirement or freedom, financial freedom, whatever it is that your goals are. So if you want, I will be happy to give you my template for the personal financial statement. Just send an email to support@coachingmasterycommunity.com, and I'd be happy to send that to you. So you can start to track in a very, kind of structured way.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sherry, for offering that. Support@coachingmasterycommunity.com.
Yes.
Say, Sherry, I want your spreadsheet on net worth. And then if you're interested in joining our community, just let us know that too. Either way. And I love that, Sherry. What is your net worth is an important question to know. I would also say, what is your cash flow? So you need to know that number is almost more important sometimes. But both are very important. So thank you for sharing with us today, Sherry. Thank you for this amazing conversation. I feel like I learned a lot about you again, and I thought there's some things for myself today, so I appreciate that a lot. And as always, I love talking with you, so thank you for an amazing podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We trust that you got value out of this. And if you want to let us know what specifically you loved about it, what nugget, or if you're like, you're just a bunch of full of it, if you want to tell us that, that's totally okay. You can also send us an email about that.
There's no way anybody thinks that.
No. But either way, we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your time and energy, and we'll see you next time.